Now, Mr. President, I rise on another matter that I have addressed the Senate on quite frequently lately, and that is about Judge Brett Kavanaugh. 1 week from today, Judge Brett Kavanaugh will appear before the Senate Judiciary Committee for the first day of his confirmation hearing. After reviewing Judge Kavanaugh's very extensive record, I'm convinced that he's perhaps the most qualified person ever nominated to the Supreme Court. Some of my colleagues on the other side, including all of the Democratic members of the Judiciary Committee, have asked that I delay Judge Kavanaugh's hearing. They've asked me to delay the hearing because of legal issues surrounding some of President Trump's former associates. It's absolutely not clear to me what one has to do with the other, but this is, by my account, at least the third strategy Democratic leaders have used to try to delay Judge Kavanaugh's hearing. Liberal outside groups, if you recall, announced their opposition to any one and every one of the 25 potential nominees before the president made his decision. And those 25 potential nominees were, for the most part, given to the people of the country probably 6 months even before the president's election. No other president has told you the type of people he was going to put on the Supreme Court and give you those examples. Now, some Democrats joined these outside liberal groups, and many others announced their opposition immediately after the nomination. The minority leader, before he even had a chance to meet with Judge Kavanaugh or review Judge Kavanaugh's record, said that he would fight the nomination with everything he's got. Democratic leaders' first strategy was to try to argue that the Biden rule, which bars the confirmation of Supreme Court justices in a presidential election year, also applies during midterm election years. This was a strange argument to make, given that many of those senators argued in 2016 that the Biden rule didn't even exist for presidential elections. Fact checkers and outside observers widely rejected this argument. The historical record was clear. The Biden rule has never applied during midterm election years. The second strategy Democratic leaders pursued was to attempt to bury the Judiciary Committee in irrelevant paperwork, mountains of it. I have discussed the issue at length previously, so I'll only give you a bottom line. The bottom line is that we have received more pages of documents from Judge Kavanaugh's time as an executive branch lawyer than we did from any previous Supreme Court nominee. In fact, we have already received over 430,000 pages of Judge Kavanaugh's executive branch legal records, which is nearly as many as the last 5 nominees combined. This is on top of the 307 opinions he wrote and hundreds more he joined as a judge on the D.C. Circuit over the past 12 years. The public already has access right now to every one of these more than 10,000 pages of judicial writings, as well as the nearly 18,000 pages that we received in connection with his judicial questionnaire. Those were supplemental to the 110 pages that he filled out in the questionnaire. And by the way, that happens to be the most robust questionnaire ever issued to a Supreme Court nominee. Democratic leaders now are asking me to delay Judge Kavanaugh's hearing because of some of the president's former associates' legal troubles. But this is just another obvious and opportunistic attempt to push the confirmation process past the midterm elections. After all, both Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Justice Stephen Breyer were confirmed while President Clinton was personally under investigation for the Whitewater controversy. In fact, Justice Breyer was confirmed while President Clinton's personal documents were under grand jury subpoena. Moreover, between June 1993 and February 1999, a period during which President Clinton faced significant legal jeopardy, the Senate confirmed 248 district judges and 50 circuit judges for lifetime appointments. It's clear, then, that Democratic leaders' latest attempt to delay the confirmation is unsupported by law or history. Another reason Democratic leaders have focused on these issues is to divert attention from the great record and abilities of Judge Kavanaugh. They know that Judge Kavanaugh is exactly the type of justice that the American people want, because that's what the Constitution calls for. Somebody to interpret the law, not to be a super legislator. Judge Kavanaugh has served for 12 years on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, a court many consider to be the second most powerful court in our country. During that time, he authored more than 300 opinions and joined hundreds more. The Supreme Court has, in at least a dozen separate cases, adopted legal positions advanced by Judge Kavanaugh in his opinions. And historians of the Supreme Court would say that that's a very impressive record. Judge Kavanaugh has demonstrated that he understands the proper role of a judge, that I also would say he sees himself as a judge and not a super legislator. In numerous opinions and in speeches and publications, Judge Kavanaugh has eloquently expressed that judges must find and apply the law as is written, not how they wish the law were written. And if they followed how they wish the law were written, that falls into the category that I say a judge becomes a super legislator. So Judge Kavanaugh recently said this on that point, quote, "When courts apply doctrines that allow them to rewrite the laws, in effect, they are encroaching on the legislature's Article I power," end of quote. And if you ever wonder why judges shouldn't be super legislators, that's because they have lifetime appointments. If you don't like what they do, you can't vote them out of office. Whereas, if the legislating's done by the Congress of the United States and you don't like the laws that the Congress passes, you can vote those members of Congress out of office. Now, Judge Kavanaugh has also argued that judges must apply the same approach to all cases. He said this, quote, "Like cases should be treated alike by judges of all ideological and philosophical stripes, regardless of the subject matter and regardless of the identity of parties to that case." Judge Kavanaugh's judicial, that's end of quote. Judge Kavanaugh's judicial record reveals that he follows his own advice. He decided cases based on his understanding of law as written, not his own personal policy preferences or who the litigant is. In addition to his impeccable qualifications and record of achievement, Judge Kavanaugh has shown a dedication to public service, mentorship, and diversity. He spent all 3 years of his legal career, all but 3 years of his legal career in public service. He volunteers his time to coach both his daughter's youth basketball teams, and he serves meals to the homeless in Catholic charities. Judge Kavanaugh is a proven mentor to law students and young lawyers. Judge Kavanaugh has taught courses at Harvard Law School on separation of powers and the modern Supreme Court since 2008. Since the Senate Judiciary Committee received a letter in support of his confirmation from his former students, and they wrote this, quote, "We represent a broad spectrum of political and ideological beliefs as well as perspectives on judicial philosophy. We have differing views on political issues surrounding the confirmation process, but we all agree on one thing. Judge Kavanaugh is a rigorous thinker, a devoted teacher, and a gracious person," end of quote. But this letter goes on with other things that's important about Judge Kavanaugh, so I quote again, "Both inside and outside the courtroom, Judge Kavanaugh evinced a genuine warmth and interest in his students and their careers. He was exceptionally generous with his time, making himself available to meet with students not only to discuss the class, but also to assist with their scholarly writings or to offer career advice. In many instances, he has continued to provide advice and support long after the class ended by writing letters of recommendation and serving as a valued mentor. In our view, his genuine interest in helping young lawyers demonstrates a deep commitment to the legal community as a whole." End of quote from students of his of differing political views. Federal judges also play an important role in mentoring the next generation of lawyers. They typically hire 4 new law clerks each year to help them research and decide cases. A law clerk is like a judge's right arm. A judge's law clerks know the judge better than anyone else. Day in and day out, law clerks work closely with the judge in chambers every day on complex legal issues. Judge Kavanaugh has clearly taken seriously his mentorship role with his clerks. His former law clerk submitted a letter to this committee strongly supporting his confirmation, and they wrote again, quote, "It was a tremendous stroke of luck to work for and be mentored by a person of his strength of character, generosity of spirit, intellectual capacity, and unwavering care for his family, friends, colleagues, and us, his law clerks. He is unfailingly warm and gracious with his colleagues, no matter how strongly they disagree about a case. And he is well liked and respected by judges and lawyers across the ideological spectrum as a result. He always makes time for us, his law clerks. He makes it to every wedding, answers every career question, and gives unflinchingly honest advice. That advice often boils down to the same habits we saw him practice in the chambers every day. Shoot straight, be careful and brave, work as hard as you possibly can, and then work a little harder. End of quote from his law clerks. One of the areas where Judge Kavanaugh has had a particular impact is his commitment to diversity. More than half of his law clerks have been female. Indeed, during 1 year, all 4 of his law clerks were female, which was the first for the D.C. Circuit. Judge Kavanaugh's female law clerks sent the committee a letter. These law clerks wrote, quote, "We know all too well that women in the workplace still face challenges, inequality, and even harassment. Among other things, women do not enjoy a representative share of prestigious clerkships or high-profile legal positions. But this committee and the American public broadly, and the American public more broadly, should be aware of the important work Judge Kavanaugh has done to remedy those disparities. In our view, the judge has been one of the strongest advocates in the federal judiciary for women lawyers," end of quote. Additionally, Judge Kavanaugh has a track record of recruiting and hiring diverse law clerks from the best law schools. It's clear that he cares about expanding opportunities to unrepresented groups in the law. The legal profession should be open to anyone, regardless of where they grew up or where their parents immigrated from. Judge Kavanaugh's clerks reflect this important principle. In sum, Democratic leaders committed 1 month ago to oppose Judge Kavanaugh's confirmation. They've thrown a lot against the wall to try to delay his confirmation, but none of it sticks. Judge Kavanaugh will have his hearing next week, and I'm looking forward to it. And based upon my review of Judge Kavanaugh's extensive record, it appears that he is extremely qualified to sit on the Supreme Court. He understands the proper role of a judge in our constitutional system, and he has devoted time to serving his community and improving the legal profession. I yield the floor.